Okay, so in this video we're going to talk about what we call parameterized methods. And really, when it comes down to it, sometimes a method needs something from us in order to do its job. An example of this that we've already seen is the math.pow method. This is one of the built-in methods in the Visual Studio and in the .NET framework. And what does Pow need from us? He has a job to do. He's like, sure, I'll raise a base to a power. So let's say I was going to raise 10 to the second power, and then I'd get a 100 back. But the point is, this method has a job to do, but in order to do that job, we need to provide it with additional information, like a base and a power. So let's turn our attention to one of our homemade methods here. And this method is going to mimic a jukebox. I use this example because we've all interacted with a jukebox in real life. And the jukebox is like a method. It has a job to do. Its job is to play songs that we want to hear. In order for it to do its job, it needs something from us. It needs a couple of things. It needs money, and it needs a song selection. So that's like a method. So let's start with void. Again, we're just taking that on faith for now. And let's call our method jukebox. And we said the method needs two things from us. Money. Why don't we do a decimal type, and we'll call it money. So this is a parameter I've created. A parameter is just a variable when it comes down to it. I'm just declaring a variable, but it's a special variable that belongs to the method. And so we create a money parameter, and then also like a selection, a string for the selection, like A1, B2, or something like that. Okay. So we would say this method is parameterized, or more specifically, this method has two parameters. It has a decimal parameter, decimal type for the money, and it has a string type for the selection or the code for the song. Okay, so again, parameters are just variables. They're special variables that belong to the method. And once we have the kind of the shell of the method in place, I'm just going to paste some code in here. We'll talk about it. I said money here. Okay, so when the method runs, it's going to have the money and the selection because we're going to have to pass those items into the method when we call the method from the main method. So we're going to assess if the money is equal to 50 cents. Let's say it's 50 cents per song. We're going to play that selection. I want you to take note here. Look at the way I'm using my parameters inside the code for the method. Okay, so if the money that comes, I think of this, the parentheses as like a doorway into the method. I've got money coming through the door, I've got a selection coming through the door, and okay, now I'm going to look at them. Is the money equal to 50 cents? If so, great. I'm going to play the selection. All right, now playing whatever, A1, B2, whatever we decide to pass. Or else, I'm going to say, please insert correct change. Okay, but I just want you to notice that I'm using the parameters inside the code. That's what they're for. That's what they're for. So finally, I will call the method. I went to all the trouble to code that method, so now I'm going to call it. I'm going to pass the 50 cents and A1 for my song selection, whatever that may be. So I'll go ahead and run that. Again, you're calling the method, you're saying, hey, you, run your code. Okay, so that worked out. We're now hearing my song selection, whatever that was. Okay, just a little more terminology. So these are parameters for the method. When you pass those values, you call the method and you pass those values into the method. The 50 cents goes into the money parameter. The A1 goes into the selection parameter. Order matters, okay? And these values that we're passing into the parameters are called arguments. Arguments. Those are the values passed into the method's parameters. Okay, and here's another thing. If you parameterize a method, you've got to pass values into those parameters. If I try to do this, for example, now the compiler is complaining. It's like I coded the method to accept 2 arguments or to have 2 parameters. And so now if I'm calling that method, I've got to pass the arguments to satisfy those parameters. So, you know, everything has got to match perfectly. And I mean, that's always been the case in programming, how picky it is. But you're especially going to see that with methods because we've got a lot going on, you know, with the parameters and the arguments and all that. So now is not the time to get sloppy, if you will.